Good evening, everyone. All right. Welcome again to the Portland Art Museum and our four-part conversation series, Force of Nature, Portland's Parks, Past, Present, and Future. I'm just curious, how many of you have come to one of the two previous events? Wow. This is what we wanted, Randy. A lot of return visits. That's great. Thank you for being here. I will just briefly introduce myself. I'm Stephanie Parrish. I'm the Associate Director of Education and Public Programs. I worked with the University of Oregon and Randy Gragg in particular to help pull this series together. The museum was really adamant when we organized the Tuileries exhibition that we wanted there to be a strong component about Portland parks and really looking at the history, the present, the future of what our park system says about our community and how we steward it today and in the future. And I really am so thankful to Randy for having pulled together such a strong lineup. Tonight, as you know, we are going to be looking at Portland Parks, next Portland Parks, I guess is the right term. And I want to make a note of the models that are out in the lobby outside the Whistle. Those are from students who recently participated in the University of Oregon's design camp. And they were thinking about the next parks outside of this museum. So right the South Park blocks that you will exit the building in front of. So when you look at those, keep that in mind. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Randy. Before I do, just a reminder about Randy's bio. He's been in Portland for 28 years. He's currently the director of the University of Oregon's John Yon Center and editor-at-large for Portland Monthly. He's president of the Halprin Landscape Conservancy and on the board of Pioneer Courthouse Square. He previously wrote on culture and urban issues for The Oregonian. He was a Loeb Fellow at Harvard University's Graduate School of Design, and he also served as a National Arts Journalism Fellow at Columbia. So please join me in welcoming Randy Gragg once again.
Guys, this is so great. You guys come to all of these. I'm really, it's great. It's really good. So as Stephanie said, tonight's the third part of Force of Nature. In evening number one, we revisited the roots of the park system. Let's get my first title slide up there. Yeah, thanks. We revisited the roots of the park system and the philosophy and work of Frederick Law and John C. Olmsted. Evening number two, last week we heard from our two most recent parks directors, Zari Santner and Mike Abate, about their successes and the challenges ahead. And next week's going to be a really great program too. We're going to zoom the lens back and think about the region, the Willamette Valley as a kind of park that is a landscape managed not just to work in, but for us to enjoy its beauty, especially with a whole lot more of us coming here to enjoy it. But tonight, we're going to hear from some of the most gifted landscape architects in the city for a look at park design, what they've designed themselves, their critique of what's missing from Portland's urban landscape, and their proposals for what we have not yet seen. But first, I want to take this moment for a shameless plug. As Stephanie said, I'm the director of the John Yon Center. This is one of the properties that I oversee. This is the other one. The first one's the Watzik House, 1937 modernist masterpiece. This is the Shire. It's a 75-acre sculpted landscape directly across from Multnomah Falls and the Columbia Gorge. And my job is to build a constituency for these properties and the John Yon Center with programs such as these that spotlight those who, like John Yon, are actively working to create beauty in the region. And if you are free, August 16th and 17th, I would love to tour you through the Shire. So you can go on the website and make a reservation there. And August 22nd and 23rd, we're going to do some tours of the Watzik House. So mark your calendars for that. So now, on to our program. There's a couple more views of the Shire. So I want to introduce everybody here. The far end, Chelsea McCann. She's a UO graduate. a principal at Walker Macy, and managing the firm's day-to-day operations, where she has worked for the last 14 years. Landscape, she says, are a healing element between the natural and structural environments. Among the many projects that she has and is overseeing is the Los Angeles National Cemetery. But for But for tonight, she is the fabulous Moolah. I asked everybody to pick a wrestling avatar so we could kind of spice things up tonight a little bit. So you're wondering what's going on. Because it's going to be kind of a contest. We're going to have 3 rounds, and each of them they're under a very, very strict time limit. And a lot of them have a lot of slides, so it's going to be real interesting to watch. Let's see here. Oops, got ahead of my notes. Jonathan Beaver is the co-founder with Melinda Graham of 2 Ink Studio, a small 8-year-old firm that's won a lot of awards. Among the recent projects is the Columbia wastewater treatment plant. This seems to be advancing itself. Let's stop that. Yeah, I know. I guess I put myself on a timer. Let's see. As I said, he designed the Columbia wastewater treatment plant, a really beautiful landscape. His background is as an artist and a landscape architect. Developed his interest in integration of aesthetics and ecology in the landscape. But tonight he is Sergeant Slaughter. Let's see if I can. Kurt Lango. I'm worried this is going to advance and it's giving away all my punchlines. There we go. Okay, Kurt Lango is the co-founder with Jane Hansen of Lango Hansen Landscape Architects. He's also a UO grad. One of the firm's more visible and enjoyable projects is the lovely outdoor space at Hotel Madeira, but he is El Dominio Azul. Okay, I gotta make this thing stop doing this. All right, Carol Mayer Reed. This is a really important one. The timing is really important on this because I have more than one avatar for her. She is, so I'm gonna wait. We're gonna look at El Dominio for a moment here. Carol Mayer Reed is the founding partner with her husband, Michael Reed of Mayer Reed Architecture, Landscape Architecture. Among their many highly visible projects is the Vera Katz East Bank Esplanade and the Oregon Convention Center Rain Garden. The fields of landscape architecture and urban design, she says, are the intersections of art, science, technology, and sociology. Now, Carol left the choice of her avatar to me. We've known each other a long time. Could it be Princess Sugi? Carol said no pink, no pink. She warned me. The tsunami. Nope. It had to be somebody deep and mysterious. Goya Kong. Okay, Charlie Brucker is founding partner at Place Studio, whose work from intimate landscapes to large-scale urban development and master planning efforts can be found in North America, South America, Europe, Middle East, and Asia. Locally, you can find their work climbing the metal sunshades toward the sky at the recently remodeled Edith Green and Wendell Wyatt Federal Building downtown. Charlie's another UO grad. We've really got good representation here from U of O. There he is. But he is, for tonight, Tineblas. Lastly, Jeff Schnabel is a landscape architect and a professor at PSU, and my colleague on the board of the Halpern Landscape Conservancy. Jeff is currently exploring the potential of projected media to transform the built environment. He's working on light, in other words. He is a graduate of UPenn and founding member of Urban Lab PDX, based in the School of Architecture. This collective is charged with exploring provocative ideas at the city scale. But could there be little doubt of who he is tonight? Hulk Hogan. So our first segment tonight, they will be presenting their work. They have exactly 3 minutes, or they get the gong. From my good friend and colleague, Vanessa Rennick. Take a bow, Vanessa. Okay. Let's cue up Chelsea's slides for number 1. Thanks. You have a 5-second warning.
Oh, thank you. All right, here we go. So this is a presentation I like to call 40 Years of Walker Macy in 3 minutes or less. So Walker Macy is a Portland firm. Because of our longstanding existence here in Portland, we've had the opportunity and the honor to work on many of our planning and our development projects that have helped to be part of making this world-class park system that we all enjoy. And even today, we're still working with the city, and we're working with Portland Parks and Rec to continue to design wonderful spaces for our community, for our neighbors, and for ourselves to really enjoy and experience every single day. And at the heart of our approach to design is really the idea that all landscapes should be made to be meaningful and purposeful. We take the time to understand the landscape, the surrounding architecture, the community, and we use that understanding to help guide our design work so that every single one of our projects is truly anchored in a sense of place, and it's a reflection of the community who will be using it. One of the things that we're really inspired by are the places that we work in and the people we work with. And we try very, very hard to create seamless integration between architecture and landscape that is unique as the places where they're located. We look to the past, the present, and the future, looking for themes and patterns, whether they're traditional or contemporary, to apply to our work. And we try to take that to throughout the West. And our work extends everything from urban plazas to wide open spaces. But the heart of everything we do is environmental sustainability. And we try to express that in ways that are artful and engaging so that it encourages discovery and education. We have offices in both Portland and Seattle, and that has allowed us to extend our design approach well beyond Oregon's borders and throughout the western states. We've found that our approach to collaboration and design has been well received, and we firmly believe that by working together, we're able to draw out the best thinking and come up with better and stronger ideas. And we are always, working from our past experiences, but trying to push ourselves to do more and to do better in every design that we do. We try to come up with ideas that will transcend today's trends and create engaging solutions for their communities. So you're going to see a few slides here that are examples of some of our current work. And the first one's about to pop up. So we're tapping into a lot of our experience with urban plazas and creating these up and down the West Coast. And this is an opportunity for us to really create wonderful, beautiful spaces that are technically complex and are sure to become the hearts of their communities for many decades to come. We're also looking for ways to approach sustainability and technology, creating new and innovative approaches to restoration. And we have been honored to have the opportunity to work on some of our state's most culturally significant landscapes, trying to find ways to re-envision spaces and reimagine them for their communities and for the greater state. Walker Macy is a firm that has been and continues to be dedicated to the idea of collaboration, community, and creativity in everything that we do. The end.
Okay, thank you. When Melinda and I started Tuileries Studio, it was 2006, and if you all recall, the next year we hit a recession, and that's really kind of formed the basis of the work that we've done. And what we've tried to do in our studio is really engender an appreciation and an understanding that what makes landscapes really great is an understanding of the history, the ecology, the politics that come into play in landscape design, and the complex programs that were often handed, and the end user. And one of the things that we talk a lot about in our office is the notion of legibility in our work. And I think what that means is that as you're pulling together these complexities in the work, what we really strive to do is to boil that down and to really come to what we see as really the essence and the heart of the work, and that it should be legible, it should be very readable. And this is some of our work. This is work both completed and current. This is a project here that involves a combination of action sports, music, and fine arts in a kind of collaborative environment. This is some speculative work that we did for Google a few years ago. The Burnside Bridgehead project, an integration of landscape and architecture. And this is Dawson Park, which just opened up 2 weeks ago after being closed for a number of years. This project really tells the history of the park and its involvement in Portland's civil rights era. And we've done some other projects too, the Martin Luther King Gateway and Heritage Marker project that also is a project that talks about the history of the neighborhood and explores notions of immigration and migration in our neighborhoods. Crystal Springs Rhododendron Garden, small intervention. Some work that we're doing at Harvey Mudd College. Beautiful landscape. And sustainability is a huge part of our work as well. This is the work that we just recently completed at the wastewater treatment plant. Really looking at integration of architecture and site work and sustainable strategies, and really tapping into the ecology and restoration, and designing work that really feels like it's integrated into the seasons. Thank you.
Ready?
There you go, El Dominio.
Well dressed, I would say. Jane Hansen and I formed our office in 2000. We're in the Pearl and have 8 employees and do a wide range of work at all different scales. Courtyards, Hotel Madeira. We also just finished the Pearl Marriott. And really what's interesting about a lot of these spaces is that they are privately owned, but they definitely have a very public component to them. We're also working on a project in North Portland, again, privately owned, but we're thinking that it's going to be a very public, very sustainable open space shown here. We also do a lot of roof terraces in and around Portland. This is the Janie. It's a LEED certified project. It's really creating these kind of very intimate spaces, but also thinking about how you frame the views to the cityscape. This is a project just a couple blocks away for a private art gallery, really with the same ethic. We also do a lot of higher education work as well. And this one is for the Maryhill Museum. This one was actually an interesting project because it was almost void of landscape altogether, a very restrained plaza. And then this is the PSU project also. We do a lot of higher education work. This is down at UC Davis. I think our work tends to be kind of simplicity and form. We're very interested in how materials come together. Sustainability is also a common thread. This is down at Chemeketa. This next project is kind of interesting. It's for PCC Willow Creek. It's a series of buoys that come up and down, emerge out of the plaza, depending upon how much water is in the cistern below. Open space and parks kind of form the backbone of our work. This project is down in Oregon City, an old sheet pile wall where we pierced it with kind of a steel bird's nest. Locally, we collaborated with Hargraves Associates on Elizabeth Carruthers Park. And then Also, we do a lot of larger kind of open space, but residential work as well. Really kind of clean lines, simplicity in form, thinking about the craftsmanship, how materials are coming together. And nearby is another kind of public garden, the 10th Street Green Street, which we also did, shown here. And then lastly, a couple of years ago, Jane Hansen in our office designed the Festival of Flowers, Tattoo Portland. And I think in some ways it's kind of a fitting end to this of why we're all here.
El Domineo.
Can't quite get over that. Ooh. All right. Can you hear me? Does this mic work? Okay. So, slides, please. During the last 30 years, Mayor Reed's designed over 50 park projects. So I decided to focus tonight on waterfronts and urban parks. And so suffice it to say, we draw our daily inspiration from exactly what's right outside our window. And my first project was with John Warner Associates, Cathedral Park. And trust me, the learning curve was very steep on that. I loved shaping the space. I loved the grading that was involved. I loved the picturesque setting and the bridge enduring in this beautiful landscape. Then I worked on Selwood Riverfront Park, and this is one of the projects that has changed over time, and this is a picture of it where people are actually using the waterfront as opposed to the dogs that it's gone to. We completed Salem Riverfront Park, and I think I learned as much about the politics of Salem as I did about the park itself. But it remains very successful, lots of mature landscape. It's really quite beautiful, and it's a very successful park in that city. We worked on the East Bank Esplanade for 6 years before completion, and what can we say, Randy and Mike? We let the people vote with their feet and with their tires. People love this loop centered on the river, especially what connects us to the surface of the water. And even if the birds could vote for their nests, they'd show that people, urban spaces, historic artifacts, and habitat can all work together. So if you work long enough, sometimes you get to revisit something else that you worked on earlier. This time it was back to Cathedral Park for a master plan, and found ways that we can really start to have some interventions in that park that will really bring it farther into the future. And then we got to work on the three downtown parks, one of which was O'Brien Square, a master plan for that project that's part of the 3 parks, O'Brien Director and Pioneer Square. We also worked with Lori Olin on Simon and Helen Director Park, and this project was just a magic piece. It was successful from the very beginning when it went in, and we learned a lot about how to activate space. We learned about the secret of the civic canopy that's really giving Portland another kind of living room, and the water. And from there, we worked on Gateway Master Plan out in East Portland, and are really looking forward to seeing this project become a reality as it moves forward into implementation in the next couple of years. Slide, please. And recently, most recently, in fact, this week, we just turned in a project proposal for the Mesa City Center Park competition, and looking at scale, and that's a picture of the size of the site for a plaza with Director Park in the middle of it. So you can see how things that we learn in Portland can even start to translate into places that we like to work and live in, even in places far from here.
Good job.
Play Studio, at its core, is a set of designers, a community of collaboration with shared values and aspirations, working to push the boundaries of our environment. And we like to have fun, too. We strive to find clarity and form, and we wrestle with design problems, always seeking to inspire those around us, and in turn to be inspired. We have surrounded ourselves with a creative atmosphere to engage and to express, to test and to explore. Our process, like our studio, is open and exploratory. We seek to test, both in our designs and our full-scale models, where we have mock-ups where we are able to refine our ideas, engaging our clients, so that we can ask the question, not just why, but how, and what will it look like. Our projects are often of the same fabric and the same common problems and conditions, but we seek new solutions, asking if there's a better way, and then we find that better way. We have a boldness in our ideas and our forms, and this excites us, whether it's a monumental move in the landscape or whether it's the light craftsmanship and details of a water feature. We seek to create places which are both timeless and memorable. Our design work brings us and our talents to international destinations, expanding our horizons and exposing us to new ways of thinking or constructing, and allowing us to bring these back to Portland, where we find the cross-pollination of concepts and cultures and scale quite exhilarating. We're able to explore projects that are urban parks the size of downtown Portland. And these types of efforts keep our movement fresh and our ideas expanding at all times. The exploration of materiality and night environments is pretty amazing. And if you think about parks in the sky or wetlands on roofs, then you'd be thinking along the same lines that we are. A little bit closer to home, in the Lloyd District, we've been able to seek a way of creating place through water and identity, linear corridors that connect communities and connect places. The idea of honoring our community and the people within it, both in edifice and in architecture. Parks are some of the most special projects to us, where we get to work with passionate people, where we're able to express ourselves, work really hard, and get amazing rewards. And we feel that these are the places where Portland gets to play.
So the old version of Hulk Hogan as opposed to the young version of Hulk Hogan is kind of...
Well, you know.
I know.
It happens.
I'm just
Never gets any earlier, Jeff.
Prior to coming to Portland to teach at Portland State, I had the good fortune, it's automatic for me too. I had the good fortune of working in a practice, or developing a practice, where we worked in industrial sites, remaking them for new purposes. And man, those are going fast.
No, there's something wrong actually. So hit the reverse button and it'll hold it. Yeah.
I will do that. All right. There we go. So I developed a small practice, and I was working on projects that were industrial sites that were no longer industrial. And this happened to be Clipper Mill, where the nation's capital columns were cast. It's a big cast iron facility that had a tragic fire. At one point, it employed 600 people in this small community. So I love ruins, and I love playing with those ruins. The practice gave me a chance to work with artists and fabricators, all kinds of really interesting people who all wanted to share the same ideal of preserving some of the fabric so that it didn't get completely lost. The other thing that we kind of shared was an ideal of not making things too terribly precious, that it's okay for landscapes to be kind of rugged and dirty and rusty and messy. And so a lot of our landscapes are about that. One of my major jobs at Clipper Mill was to just run around with spray paint and tape. Sorry about the slide order here, but with spray paint and tape and mark things to not get thrown away. And stand in front of bulldozers and make sure the walls didn't get knocked down. And then I moved on to Silo Point. You might, any of you guys that watched The Wire might have been aware of this building as a background. At some point in the show, one of the characters said, there's some asshole's going to turn this into a condominium. And I was part of that asshole team that turned those into condominiums. At one point, this was the largest grain elevator in the United States. And a lot of it came down for structural reasons, but we tried to keep as much as we possibly could. And I began to get excited about the things that were related to grain and grain elevators. Excuse me, I'm going to keep bouncing back and forth. And one of the things that we did was built a giant mound in front of the building, and that mound is the exact volumetric contents of one of the silos. So it gives people a really good sense of what this place was about. And then, as it so happens, if you put a mound in the landscape, kids just innately know what to do with it. This is kind of some of the other inspiration pieces for that. I'm going to go through some images quickly. We did stormwater retention. Boy, that gong comes quickly. And then finally, we chose plane trees, which you can see the patina of those trees match the silos that were left behind, and each plane tree marks one of the silos that was taken down.
Okay. A great round one. Luke, hold up. Yeah, back it up a little bit. So we get back to Chelsea and her critique.
All right, here we go.
Yep.
All right, so some of you, or a lot of you already know that I am a Portland native. And in fact, I grew up in a part of Portland where our homes are mid-century. They look a lot like this. Designed with the idea that good design should be something you experience every day because it makes you feel like this. And there are studies that prove it. It reduces stress, it improves health, and it promotes creativity and motivation. And this is something everyone in our community should get to experience all the time. And in fact, Portland Parks has done a fantastic job of creating just that in our downtown core. Wonderful parks that are beautifully made with beautiful materials that everyone has a great time running through. But to experience on a regular basis, you have to either be able to afford to live downtown, or perhaps you work downtown, or you're one of our many, many happy tourists. Now, Parks is looking at expanding the park system, and I put a challenge that we should start to bring up the level of quality so that the parks in the outer areas are equitable instead of this. So here are some examples. Things that you see downtown, and then perhaps the more ordinary version of what we find in the deep southeast right now. We have beautiful detailing, custom elements in our core, and then you have something else when you go out there. And even our more utilitarian objects have been thought out as opposed to this.
Jesus.
So my critique is that we should really think about doing a little less of this, and perhaps consider, as we replace them, to do a little bit more of this for all of our community members, so that everyone in Portland can feel a little bit more like this.
I think most of us are familiar with sites like these rehabbed and municipal, industrial landscapes that have been turned into something else. And Portland has these too. For example, the Springwater Corridor transformation from rails to trails. And we've also missed some really great opportunities, in my opinion. But what I actually want to talk about a little bit more is a different kind of relationship between industry and parks. And that is the landscapes that you see in and around Portland, where infrastructure and park space, quasi-public or fully public spaces actually coexist in the same area. And there's some really wonderful examples of this in Portland, and they create a really fantastical experience. And so I want to show you one that I think is really interesting, 40 miles east of Portland at the Bonneville Dam Fish Hatchery, which is a great amalgamation of nature and industry and design. And it's almost like these fish breeding tanks are like contemporary parterre gardens of fish. If you haven't been out there, you should definitely go. It's a really incredible contrast between a working landscape and a really beautifully designed landscape. Parts of this space are incredibly rough. You have full access to the full site, and then it's contrasted with these beautiful, beautifully designed garden areas, some really amazing turn-of-the-century architecture, and just really thoughtful designs. You know, in places it almost gets a little kitschy, but it's really a pretty fantastical place. I mean, you see some of these views and you feel like you could be in Central Park. And as you get to the edges, this landscape and where the waterways go transitions into the natural edges, and there's just this incredible beauty. And I think it's a really great opportunity for Portland to begin to consider infrastructure in relation to parks. Thank you.
Ready? Randy asked us to take a look at what's good about parks, what's missing, and then depending on how much money you have, definitely what needs to be fixed. And so, first of all, just thinking about, well, what's good? And so as part of this discussion, be concentrating on the west side, and certainly there's a rich history of parks over here that all kind of fit very nicely in the 200 by 200 foot grid. You know, the Plaza Parks, North and South Parks. And then you think on the northwest side, Jameson Square, Tanner Springs, and then the recent addition of the Fields. So all these kind of fit nicely together, and what makes them good spaces? Well, they all have a very similar recipe. A lot of them have water areas for respite. Certainly art is a running theme, performance, and then closer to City Hall areas for protest. And so what's missing from them? Well, when you think about this kind of perfect grid, definitely there are some shifts in the street. And you think about Burnside, alleyways, and then also some of the ramps. And so these create these kind of lost, unused spaces. You'll find art in them, but that's mostly object-oriented, street seats. But to think about these spaces being reimagined, they don't have to be big. They could have things that you normally wouldn't find in the other parks, just a variety of things to experience. So what needs to be fixed? Well, there's a difference between working in the private right-of-way versus the public right-of-way, and often it's a struggle to kind of get things done in the public area. That's not right. So you have to think about, I'm going to have to throw you down. I'm going to keep on going. So what needs to be fixed? So that's part of the next segment.
Okay. Slides, please. And this is my first presentation, so I think there aren't the right slides up right now.
Uh-oh.
Can you fix that?
Oh.
Ooh, I could.
Oh, something went wrong.
There we go. Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Square. I think the first two slides. Can I start over?
Yeah. Let her start over. Rewind.
How do we do that? Because I had two slides ahead of that, and these weren't them.
Okay, and, okay, yeah.
Randy said this was going to happen.
He did?
Yeah, I warned him something would go wrong, so.
All right.
Gotta stay loose.
All right. Well, I'll substitute what I was going to say for this. Okay. So what's missing? You know, Portland has an outstanding system of parks, and after all, we've won national gold medal awards. But as we become more dense and we add a whole nother million people, we're running out of land to acquire more parks. And as we travel, now there's the slide, not that one. Next one. As we travel and marvel at vibrant urban squares across the world, we note how they're centers for urban activity. And the squares that we see that we really enjoy are often places that you see people lingering, enjoying. They pass through. The location has to be central. It has to be simple. It has to be flexible. There's paving, there's lighting, there's furnishings. They enhance the human scale. And so we're kind of wondering, you know, about durable paving as a quality, character-defining quality. We're wondering about who they serve. Could they be done in Portland? How would they be done? Could they be, what are the benefits of them? Could they be able to be traded in a way with neighborhoods or negotiating for enhanced amenities for the kind of density that we're starting to add to our neighborhoods? So they have to be located in just the right places, and these are possible options we've looked at on Portland city blocks. They have to be surrounded by development. They have to be surrounded by streets in just the right places. Cafes, retail, markets, food carts, they can all help activate the space. Portland's really good at that. Entrepreneurship can be expressed at a neighborhood scale, and the true authenticity of, this is not what I had in here. You guys shuffle the deck on my slides.
Uh-oh.
Okay, neighborhood identity can be enhanced through art and design. And interesting lighting can activate spaces at night. We're trying to see how these kinds of things could be done through public and private partnerships. We think this is really key. And we're wondering about the kind of possibilities of seeing your neighbors, having gathering spaces close to places. And I have to say, I think that private entrepreneurship has started to create these spaces already. Every Fred Meyer, every New Seasons, every Whole Foods is starting to do that. So why can't we start to become more entrepreneurial as a city and start to address the kind of social spaces that can be a nice trade-off for all the kind of density that we're expecting this city to accept over the next 25 years?
Well, that's gonna, the wrestling's starting, right? So we were asked to talk about the good, the bad, and the missing, and I just want to put everyone in the mood. Okay, so Portland, what it does really well, I think, is it has its inherited access. These are the parks that we were given by our forefathers that are being maintained by the stewards of our leadership today, and we're the better for it. The other thing that we do really well here is we develop the sequences of our city parks in urban areas that are very choreographed and redeveloped. And so how are we going to keep that going? What's the legacy going to be? What is the next project? The bad, the villain in Portland's park system right now is the inequity of access, especially in East Portland, outer East Portland, on the other side of 92. This is a heat map, so if it's pink, it's bad. That means that you don't have good pedestrian access within your community, that you can't get to the limited resources you have even if you want to. And so how do we make these bad neighborhoods better? From a parks perspective, we develop those properties and we do an amazing job doing it. What's missing? We have lots of property, our parks do. We have lots of plans for those properties. What we need to do is develop them now. We need to bring our communities together through parks so that they can play together, so that they can learn about one another's cultures, and they can share stories, they can share food, whether they're eating it or growing it, and then ultimately they have an opportunity to express their culture, to bring elements of their cities together. And as we all know, we should start small, but then we should build big.
You may have the same problem.
Randy says I'm going to have the same problem. I've been working on my problems all my life. Okay, here we go. You've forgotten about it because it's summertime, but for 7 months out of the year, you guys go to work and it's dark, and you come home from work and it's dark. But an awful lot of our parks are conceived of as daytime conditions. And the rules all change at night. Sound changes, activities change, our behaviors change. And our parks, as wonderful as they are, a lot of them just kind of a dull din to them. They really weren't designed specifically for nighttime. They were more designed as a daytime condition, and then we've added lights to them. So where are we putting that light? Well, we're putting it in all the wrong places. We're not supposed to add more light, but I think we can relocate where we start to put that light. We don't need to protect our trash enclosures at night. They're okay on their own. So I'm advocating for opportunities for us to get really flamboyant, really energetic, really excited about the nighttime condition. to have some fun, to create places where when we work, and about 28% of the workforce now is projected to work after the darkness hours. Our economies are moving towards a third of our economy happens after dark. So it's a real necessity. The key is, though, not to just only talk about it in terms of lighting. When we travel to Spain, the lighting is not that great in their public spaces, and yet they are incredibly vibrant spaces. But they respond to what I call the 7 C's: climate, culture, cafes, cramped housing. You have to use the public space. You don't have any choice. Children are accommodated. The children are out in the playgrounds until midnight. Curfews don't exist, and cacophonies are tolerated. So what is it in Portland that is our culture that we can take advantage of at night? And I will use that as a preview for what's coming up next.
Great. So the last round, which they're going to present their concepts for new parks maybe we haven't even thought of, kinds of parks that we haven't even really thought of in some cases, you're going to get to vote. And there's going to be a prize. So think about it as you're going through listening to these folks, and let's begin once again with Princess Moolah.
All right, so the Willamette River is the reason that we are all here. It began as a place of industry and of commerce, and people interacted with the river and with the water every single day through their work. And over time, unfortunately, it developed a reputation of being something that was dirty and should be avoided. And between the pollution and the incessant flooding, the seawall was eventually built, and we were severed from the Willamette altogether. Now, people have started to turn back towards the river through things like the River Renaissance Planning Project, which established objectives that would balance environmentalism, industry, and people. We've taken these ideas, and we've done a great job of starting to do development that brought people closer to the river. But where the edge of the river, we've focused on environmental restoration, which has been severed people from the water itself. And that's great, but I think we need a little bit more access. And we need access in urban places. So one of the ideas of the Renaissance was to build a world-class monument in a prominent riverfront location. Other cities have done this. They've created great spaces that bring people to their water bodies, that create stages, create theaters, and are iconic for their communities, things that we think of when we think of these places. Now, we've joined a team who is focused on just this, celebrating the water that we as Oregonians know and love so much, and creating a space that we can showcase everything that Portlanders are good at. There's the perfect place to do this. It happens to be just south of the Hawthorne Bridge, called the Bowl. It's a little bit lackluster right now, but it has the potential to be so much more. It has occasional events where it comes alive, but let's face it, most of the time it kind of looks like this. So I think it could be something much more in keeping with places like Millennium Park, where you have beautiful structures that bring people to the water, and I'm surprised I'm almost out of time.
No, go ahead and finish. There's something, yeah, the slides must have got you off time.
We imagine a market walk, seating terraces with an overhead canopy, central plaza, opportunities to bring people to the water's edge where they can actually get into it and touch it, a central stage, and even a boardwalk that might bring people out over the water. This could be integrated into the overall park and become a place that people enjoy every day on a day-to-day basis, which right now the bowl isn't accessible, and this would change all of that. And on top of that, it can be a place where when events occur, thousands of people can come down and celebrate the Willamette with us.
Okay,
My fault. I apologize. I gave you 2 minutes. I was in the old days.
Oh, back up.
okay.
Okay, sorry.
This is a speculative project for maybe the year 2040, when we've become a more enlightened and less car-oriented culture. Go ahead and start So I'm going to take you through a series of permutations to turn a parking garage into a park. And so we're going to start with the standard parking garage, and we're going to begin a process of deconstruction and opening it up and allowing the rain to fall in and for nature to sort of creep into the cracks and crevices and begin to grow things. And no park would be complete without places for recreation, places for people to picnic, places for people to relax. So our park will start with our parking structure will start with a park on the top. And there's something really great about parking structures as they stand now, with a beautiful spiral that sort of integrates all the floors and creates this continuous movement. We definitely want to preserve that as part of our park, preserve the elevator core for access. And in good Portland spirit, we would definitely want ground floor retail and micro retail opportunities that could start to draw people into our park. Portland doesn't have a beer garden, which is just so weird to me. We're a beer culture. And why not also take that notion vertically as well? We need to develop the interior of our park as well. So imagine food carts and bike repair stations and other elements that can be in the park. And of course, recreation, rock climbing, parkour. There's a whole new movement of park activities that can begin to populate our new park structure. And scuba diving, why not? There's not a park in Portland currently where you can scuba dive. So I say we do a little excavation as part of our park, allow people to explore the subterranean, the sewer pipes, and the water lines. And of course, parks would not be complete without summer movies. It's a great pastime, or concerts, so we can sort of excavate into the top of our park for those sort of activities. And obviously, a park is never complete without children, and the opportunities of a vertical playground experience, I think, would be really kind of fantastic. So, not quite done. So you have to sort of imagine this sort of amalgamation of all these different types and sort of compressed in an architecture where landscape and building are sort of deconstructed and sort of integrated. Amazing spaces where different activities can be viewed across from each other but vertically, and a place for recreation and really a lot of fun, I think. Thank you.
Uh-oh. Whoops. Hold on, where are we at? Got the wrong one. We're just doing that to make Carol nervous. It'll come up in a bit. He's just switching it out. Yeah, you got the wrong one. Oh, no. We need...
And Kurt, you're down to a minute. Blue
Luke, you got it? Yeah, he's got a task up there with all of these, because you have to switch them out individually.
Okay.
Yeah, good?
So
okay.
How do we fix it? So actually, we've been working over the last month, both on the design. We've gone ahead and done construction documents, hoping that ultimately Mike Abate approves these different projects. Again, we're on the west side along Burnside from 405 to Broadway. And we're reinventing this recipe of urban play with 3 different sites. The first one we're calling the Pump site right at 405. The second one we're calling Dunk. And then the third site right at Broadway is called Swing. So the Pump site is actually a pump track for teens, kids of all ages, adults that have a lot of medical insurance. And the second site, which is right next to Powell's Bookstore, Dunk, or kind of Dunktown, is an urban street basketball course. And then the third site is a Swing urban playground. So the first site is right where you have the kind of north ramp onto I-405, just kind of a desolate area. And a pump track is where you really don't pedal. You use the rhythm to navigate the track. So it's a planked board track. It takes that piece of land, kind of urban gardens, really a variety of views, both from 405, but also the ramp itself, and then an urban plaza right there, kind of at the center of Burnside. The second site, Dunk. So again, that's right across from Powell's, and that's where that kind of concrete triangle is. And so we are moving the sculpture to maybe one of Carol's sites. And so what you notice here is you can still see the Powell's bookstore sign on that, but it's an urban basketball court. Dogs aren't allowed in here, but it's a place for anyone to show up, and you might, you never know who might be there for a pickup game. So the third site is a swing set, and also, to steal Jonathan's idea, also a rock climbing wall, a totally unused space. The wall itself is grass-lined on the back of it, 20-foot high swing set, kind of urban plaza with turf. And you can just imagine the views you get both up and also down of Burnside and Broadway. So those are our three kind of new recipes: pump, dunk, and swing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you guys must have a lot of time on your hands to do those things. I have to apologize. I've taken this way too seriously. So anyway, but I'm looking forward to seeing my next slide.
You're advancing this one.
Not the, pardon?
Yeah, this one's, you actually get to advance it.
Oh.
You're in control now.
Oh, that's.
So let's restart the time.
Hang on, I have to see what I'm doing. Okay, good. So picture this. Willamette Greenway Trail Connections is going to use 6 bridges fairly soon. We have a new Selwood Bridge coming in that'll actually be pedestrian and bike friendly, and we have the new Tillicum crossing. So we're going to have pretty soon a loop from Steel Bridge to Selwood that's going to be over 10 miles long. So how do we capitalize on that? Picture this. Talk about water taxi stops connecting from Centennial Mills to South Waterfront. What would that be like? Would it be an activated river like False Creek in Vancouver, BC? And picture OMSI's property potentials. So I don't know if you've heard much about this, but they have 1,600 feet of continuous waterfront. It's an amazing piece of property, very underutilized, and a lot of it is surface parking if you think about it. So we thought there could be an opportunity to create a healthy balance of human activity nodes and wildlife habitat and really ramp this section of the Greenway up. After all, they're going to be really well connected to the new bridge and to the light rail station, so we think this is time. So this is just an idea of a master plan for the waterfront connecting to the East Bank Esplanade and looking at OMSI as the centerpiece of this. You can see the light rail and the street connections. You can see the Tillicum Crossing Bridge. And you'll notice that there's a lot of upland development on those parcels that are now parking lots. So looking at the North Reach, what if there was infill development that really activated that stretch of the waterfront? Picture the Markham Bridge being gone. Picture I-5 somewhere else. I'm really excited about the opportunities for that. And you could look at the way that the trail could be activated, because I think, frankly, our greenways are a little bit on the passive side, and they really don't have so much commercial activation along them. We can also look at the Central Reach, and how does OMSI reach out and really take advantage of the waterfront that they have? How do they express their programs outside? How do they expand their own facilities to be able to really activate the waterfront while being the best steward of the land and creating riverbanks that start to create that habitat that we all would love to see, while introducing activity on graded decks that overhang this waterfront that we have? And then looking at the South Reach is really exciting, because OMSI's planning to put a new south entry that's going to face light rail and the streetcar stations and the Tillicum Crossing Bridge. So what if there was a really wonderful events plaza facing south, taking in the views of the West Hills, Ross Island, the bridge itself, and sunsets? That would just be incredible. And we love the idea of being able to, again, layer that landscape and have this wonderful greenway passing by with an activated upper edge with restaurants and cafes or a bar. I think that we can have this kind of commercial activation. We're very successful. Maybe similar to what you see in Vancouver, BC at Granville Island, all while keeping that waterfront habitat intact. So the birds are our friends. We're the city of blue herons. We really need to look at new ways to, again, create density in our cities, create activation, create that continuity along the greenway that we would all love to have. And that's my plan for OMSI.
Not sure what that cue is, but I'll. So I imagine that if we all painted a picture of a park, we would paint a different one. Some would be in a puddle, some would be in yesterday's sensibilities of a formal park, some would be in what they call the park, which is the street, and others take their park with them wherever they go, be it in their heart or in their rear. I think it's time for a new park, a new type of park, one that is flexible, one that is cost-effective, and one that can be built now. Think of East Portland. How diverse is that community? It's incredibly diverse, but it's also underserved. If we look at those red and orange areas, what we're thinking about here are places that you can't easily get to, building on the missing section, right? So how do you pick a place to build the next park? What we're suggesting is you don't pick a place, you pick all of them. And you do something that is a light touch, and it's a touch that is immediate. It's one that is centered on people gathering around our international languages of play and of food. So what is temporary? Temporary is something that you can do, and it's easy. It's planting a garden. It's reclaiming that field. It's pulling people together for a conversation in a vacant lot. Or it's using your imagination to create something fantastic and inspire the community. Or connecting to something like the Guggenheim and the BMW industry to inspire and push to the next level. Who's going to pay for it? Well, we have projects that are already moving forward that we can address. We all have a hammock. Let's bring them out to the parks and really invigorate those places. Let's get our mowers out and reclaim some of these parks so that our dogs or our children's dogs can come out, and maybe even those parking lots can be turned into a type of meadow for activities. Let's think about flexibility in a new way. Can you move your park wherever you go? Can you play by day and have a party by night? I think you can. I do it every day. But if you think about, again, creating a structure that is mobile, that you can move, that sits somewhere for one season, invigorates the community, and then you build something, then I think we're winning. Portland's a playful place. We're artistic. We are culturally sensitive. We're inspired. How do we bring all of these together to create more parks and to create them now? So I think that there's an opportunity for us to come together with the community, with our private industry, and to create something that's playful. I think that if we work together to create that framework so that there is structure, we can create incredible things if we can do it now. So just because it hasn't been done doesn't mean we can't do it. I say, go for it.
So with my students, we've been going out at night, and we've been taking light out into the city. Lower right is the latest project where we took lanterns up to the dark areas of Mount Tabor. But they always kind of feel a little bit like an imposition, like it's our desires that are kind of going out there. And so I've challenged the students, what would Portland need? What's the culture of Portland? Rather than just imposing things, uncover something about us that you can begin to express. And so what you're going to see is a project by Chris Klein, one of the students, who I thought had a really strong understanding of who we are as Portland and how to translate that into a park. So, in Portland, we like to get naked. In fact, we've had folks in here in the museum naked looking at art. It's just who we are. You all know it. It's who we are. We've got folks that want to get us back into the water and want us to get swimming, and then we know that nighttime is just this fruitful territory for us to play. So he's proposing a skinny dipping park for Portland. And this is an opportunity for us to play with really low light levels, kind of light levels that kind of are meaningful. There are opportunities at the entry point for us to participate either as swimmers or those who are watching those who are going to go swimming. So both voyeurs and exhibitionists will enjoy this park. There are changing rooms for us to get ready for this adventure. Again, this is just an opportunity for us to begin to express our own comfort levels with our own bodies and those with others. And then finally, we all get to take the plunge. Thanks.
Yeah, we're just over an hour, and I have to say, I don't think I have heard so many great ideas for the city and so many just general deep thoughts about the city in such a time span in all my years here. So I want to give everybody a great hand. It's just been great. So before we vote, though, when I was first trying to think of how to do this, I thought about having the designers tackle one park, each of them sort of proposing something. And the park I thought about having them tackle is the next North Park block. Which is, PNCA is renovating the 511 building, which, came with a parking lot that had sort of been claimed by the federal government, claimed, the original park block that was there. And now it's coming back into the public realm. And I'm curious what you all think should happen with that. Can we just go down the line and tell us a little bit about what you think should happen with that park? Oh yeah, you need the microphone.
Yeah. Beer garden?
Can I take a pass for a minute?
No.
Yeah, that was my answer, actually. It really is an interesting thing that we have this amazing sort of beer culture here, and there are no beer gardens in our parks. And strangely, I haven't thought about this a lot, but I think that what we need in downtown is a park that is activated much more than anything that we've tried to do before. And I actually think one thing that would be really interesting would be to build a bunch of parks there, and build them in succession and build them cheaply and test out a lot of ideas and be really bold about it, and then sort of come to a conclusion about what should happen there. And I think that's actually a site where something like that could really happen.
So this is actually not my idea, but I know it's something that Jane, my partner, has talked a lot about. But you think about some of the really wonderful hot houses or conservatories, Golden Gate Park, and maybe have some sort of large structure that houses exotic plants from all around the world. Doesn't necessarily need to be kind of an open space, but something that's covered throughout the year for people to come and really be part of the kind of wonderful Japanese garden, Chinese garden, and offer something very different for the people of Portland.
Well, I don't think I can think about just one park block without thinking about all the park blocks. And that's a long stretch, but if you think about the interconnectedness of the ones that we already have, the ones that were sold off that we don't have, that maybe we wish we had, or maybe we're happy aren't parks, it makes me think about if we blow out the post office and keep going and extend them all the way to the river. Why not just think that thought for a second? And for that specific thought, this is sort of like, I think it should be a sculpture park. We really don't have a good one here in Portland, and it could be couple of different kinds of work, some of which are interactive, some of which are kinetic, or maybe they make noise. Maybe they are objects that children play on, so that it really draws a lot of attention and energy and light to PNC. I think it's a wonderful institution and what they're doing.
So of course we're at this end and everyone else gets to go, so all of our ideas are filtered somewhat. But so mine's a two-part answer. The first part is, you can hear I'm a proponent of parks now and not talking about them and planning about them and then never having enough money to do them. And I think one of those immediate things, and Randy and I have talked about this, is that the idea of a framework or a blank canvas for a rotating sculpture exhibition with the PNCA right there, being able to bring those artistic energies out of the building and sharing them with the community, I think is pretty fantastic, and it would not take a lot of effort. The other would be to create a scale model of the Eiffel Tower right there to bring people from all around to generate a little more energy in the Pearl District, but that might be a little bit beyond us.
I've always been fascinated with PS1 in New York. When I say fascinated, just jealous, really. And what they do is annually they get a young, and that's kind of we're kind of screwed. Chelsea are okay, but the rest of us, they get a young, talented, emerging design professional to conceive of, design, and build a new landscape, a temporary landscape, that then becomes the center point for performances and exhibits and discussions. And because it's temporary, it's got a kind of a vibrancy to it. You can kind of let all the stops out because you know that next year it's going to be remade. And you come back to it because you want to see what it's been remade into. And so I support kind of the notions of bringing sculpture and using PNCA as the neighbor, as the adjacency there to that. But I think there's an opportunity for us to really do some interesting temporary installations, temporary landscapes that we could make for an exciting downtown.
Okay, so before we vote, does anybody out there have questions for these guys? You want them to elaborate more on any of their ideas? Questions about just anything to do with parks? Yeah.
I just want to point out, you've never used the word tree.
Now we
remember trees?
Now we did decide in the very first session that Portland Parks had too many trees. You were here for that?
Who's we? Amazing that 6 of our top park designers have not used the word tree in the last hour and a half. I think it's really amazing. Anyway, how about the concept of covering over the 405?
Great.
Or better yet, the 84, which I think has a much more fragmented community around it.
And cover 84 with trees.
Vanessa, your microphone.
When you mentioned taking down the Markham Bridge, I always think when I go across it how great it would be if it was a park.
Yes.
And why couldn't we leave it and make it a park in the sky?
Other questions out there? Thoughts to be shared? Okay. Yes.
Where does I-5 go if you take it out? You take the Markham Bridge out?
Well, there is some idea about undergrounding.
Oh, here, Carol, use the microphone.
I think that's just one idea. But another really good idea, I think, is to look at I-5 between, let's say, the Rose Quarter and OMSI as more of a high-capacity, on-grade roadway that allows a lot of traffic to go through, is wider than the 4 lanes that it is now, but also allows people to walk across. You could actually have a stop signal once in a while, a stoplight, and still be able to connect it up with both ends, but not have a freeway in our front yard. That's what I think. We can't create any more new waterfront, but we can create more access to it.
It's amazing. Our office is 2 blocks from the Willamette River on 2nd and Washington. And a lot of our staff is here, and we really have no idea the river is there because it's, it's like a 5-6 block walk down and come back. And I think it's really hard to even imagine how powerful it would be to remove that freeway and reconnect the east side to the river. I think it's an idea that just has to happen.
Okay, any last questions before we vote? Okay, Brian.
I wanted to say I really appreciate the innovative thinking, because that's clearly at the bottom of what has to happen in any planning or creative change. It's hard to swallow, though, the idea of no I-5 or things that you're suggesting are like, what? No trees? Oh my God. But I do think, I really appreciate hearing where new, fresh, and a little hard to swallow ideas come from. Thank you.
So I actually have one last question before we move on. Virtually everybody presented ideas that were not only more innovative than what we have seen, and it's not that we have any shortage of innovation in Portland parks, by some measures, but they're also a lot more fun. And I'm wondering, what stands in the way of making parks that are more fun in Portland?
Fear. But I said fear, but it's not our fear. I think it's a fear of failure on the part of the powers that be, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think a good example is with Jameson Square and the boardwalk. When Peter Walker was first hired for that, he mentioned that as an idea. And I think everyone at the city thought he was crazy, wanting to suggest something like that. So sometimes you have to kind of be removed from the process to kind of think about these ideas, and then really, try to gain support internally to make them happen. So I think you can still realize them. You just have to suggest them.
I'm in academia, so I don't have to get another job. So I kind of feel a little bit free to speak here, and I
Here, use the microphone.
I think we as Oregonians, and I'm including myself in that, we're kind of cheap bastards. And we like big ideas, but we don't necessarily want to write a check for them. And Oregonian will be quick to point out the incredible price tag that we paid for an item that goes into a park. Oh my God, that slide cost this much money. But the truth of the matter is, big ideas do cost money. They do require public investment. And so we got to get over ourselves in order to accomplish some of these big ideas. We've got to become the voice that starts to insist on good design and become louder than the voices that are insisting on bargain prices.
I think a big part of it is also scale. So a lot of what we've looked at has been small intervention, as simple as the strap-on bench or the mound of dirt, to something like the removal of the I-5 bridge. And I think if we modulate that a little bit and say the temporary notions, the temporary interventions are easier to accomplish, but they are the ones that can set the foundation for some of these broader ideas. So as we see the successes build on one another, it emboldens us and emboldens our leadership to take that next step. And going back to the Halpern sequence, we could never build that today, but those are some of our most prized parks. So that fear, that economic issue, all of those come together, and I do think it's a topic that we need to continue to wrestle with.
Great, thank you. Carol, any?
recreation event. I'm really serious about looking more at parks and public open spaces from the sociological point of view and really bringing our communities out more than they do. And when I think about, and I'm kind of getting back to this idea of bringing in a whole nother population of people, we're going to have another 1 million to 1.5 million people living here, moving here in the next 25 years. People that may have different values than the community we know right now, so there has to be sort of a, how do we change our city over that period of time so that we integrate the values of people that may be new to the community. But I also think we just need a really good melting pots. We're going to be culturally more diverse. There's a lot of baby boomers. I'm right in the middle of it. We're going to be aging. We need places that are places we are not going to drive to. You don't want to see us driving out there, trust me. So these walkable communities, these more dense communities that have cafes, that have trees and places to play with our grandchildren, that we really want these kinds of things in places we can all walk to. Because, frankly, as you've pointed out, not everybody can walk the distances to the Portland parks, and we won't have land that's available. So this public-private partnership, I'm really serious, needs to be explored, and the entrepreneurship of how the city could acquire and manage parks and activate them is really something I think we need to explore. We want to make them more fun, more interesting, more colorful, more exciting, and we need more money to do that. So where do we get the money? It's an interesting dialogue.
Anybody else? Okay. Main event, the vote. Princess Moolah and her waterfront scheme. Sergeant Slaughter and the parking garage. I still cannot pronounce this. El Demonio Azul, the pump, dunk, and swing. Goya Kong and the Omzi Willamette Greenway. Tuileries and the fast, playful park structure. Hulk Hogan and the skinny dipping park. I don't know, I think it might be a tie, so I think you're all invited to the first annual picnic at the Shire on. Thanks, everybody. I hope to see you next week. I want to thank Stephanie and Luke, especially tonight, and the great, incredible gang here at Portland Art Museum. I work with a lot of different institutions, and this has really been fun and just really, really easy. And most of all, I want to thank you guys for the incredible work and thinking you put into this evening. So, thanks. And hopefully I'll see you next Thursday to think about the Willamette Valley.